Muncie, Indiana, home to the former studio of Bob Ross's Joy of Painting, and on the northeast side of Muncie stands their local shopping mall, simply known as the Muncie Mall. If only Bob Ross were around to paint some happiness back into this place. Join me for a walk in a classic mall on the decline. Under the guidance of Melvin, Simon, and Associates, Muncie Mall would open its doors in 1970 with department stores Brits, W.T. Grant, and Sears as its primary anchors, while maintaining an Osco Drug and National Tea Supermarket as junior anchors. Plans for the mall go as far back as 1964, but was tied up in plenty of red tape as well as concerns about increased traffic. But the mall did open to much fanfare, from Santa Claus arriving at the mall to anniversary events and even Halloween events. The mall even hosted a cinema for patrons to enjoy. W.T. Grant didn't last long and would close in October 1975, along with 279 other stores in the chain. But in 1977, L.S. Ayers and J.C. would come into the picture, with J.C. arriving in January as it departed from downtown. Meanwhile, L.S. Ayers would have acquired the Brits brand and would reconfigure the store to their desires. In 1978, a new store called Ball Stores would open up in the place of a former Robert Hall clothing store and establish itself as another anchor. As a side note, mall walkers were also gaining significant notice at this time, and in 1984, a Mall Walkers Club would be established, offering you a special ID that you could use to get special discounts at select stores. Later on in 1984, rumors began circulating about a mall expansion coming forward to bring in a new store. This new store could have been Lazarus, William H. Block, or Kohl's. Simon was quick to dampen these rumors, saying that an expansion was unlikely, however. Though they would reconsider and announce an expansion and remodel in 1986. Unfortunately, a major fire would destroy part of the mall in 1987, and the projected $20 million expansion set to happen would be halted in 1988, as Simon failed to find a department store to join in. In 1989, Ball Stores would go into foreclosure and Elder Beerman would buy up the chain, taking over operations and reconfiguring the Muncie Mall location into their nameplate. This would give us L.S. Ayers, J.C. Sears, and Elder Beerman as the anchors. But as the 90s came around, trouble was on the horizon. Simon wanted to build a new strip mall on the north end of the Muncie Mall, but the project was ultimately delayed due to disagreements with the Muncie Redevelopment Commission. The cinema at the mall would also be sold to Goodrich Theaters, and tenants were beginning to move out. However, management was able to find replacements for the time being. The mall also got competition in the form of a new outlet mall in Daleville. The mall still had plenty of forward momentum, however, as the mall finally gained a new expansion and renovation in 1996, which included a bigger and better anchor pad for L.S. Ayers to quickly relocate into. J.C. would get a needed facelift in 1997, while Elder Beerman would eventually relocate to the older space left behind by L.S. Ayers. And towards the end of 1997, a ribbon-cutting ceremony was held to welcome the new wing and all of its newer offerings. This was ultimately when the mall peaked. In 2001, the three-screen cinema would close as the company that leased it chose not to renew, with a discount chain reopening the theater in 2002. In addition, long-standing tenants were also departing due to bankruptcy, but new tenants were found to mitigate the damage still. In 2005, Osco Drug would close its doors and get replaced by a Books-A-Million within the next year. Meanwhile, Ellis Ayres would get acquired and vored by Macy's. A story you are going to hear a lot if any mall has a Macy's. As the 2010s came around, vacancies were starting to become noticeable, with an Old Navy closing its doors, and the strip mall in the North End was remaining popular with Kohl's and TJ Maxx, while Target and Dick's Sporting Goods flanked the mall to the west. In 2014, Simon would sell to its B-grade counterpart, Washington Prime, and from there, things began to fall. Carson's, whom Elder Bierman was rebranded to back in 2012, would close in 2018, followed immediately by Sears. Just like that, Muncie Mall was down 2 anchors. "2020 was a particularly cruel year, as Macy's would be hastily closed thanks to this virus, and as things began to reopen, JCPenney would announce closure that same year. This would leave the mall anchorless, save for a discount store that took Macy's place, and Books A Million. Around this time, Washington Prime's CEO referred to Muncie Mall as, in their words, one of their crappiest assets, and would eventually turn over the mall to Woodmont in 2021. And this is where the mall stands today, in a precarious state of limbo and likely on the way to death. It's not over till the fat lady sings, but I do believe she is rehearsing in the back. Muncie Mall is a rather plain-looking mall. It's not terrible, and is a fair bit better than the postmodern trend, but there's just nothing about it that really jumps out beyond the mass vacancies, which make this mall look like a liminal space. I do wonder what this mall looked like back in the day, though. It had to be something nice, especially since it was built up by old Simon. I said it already, but I'll say it one more time. If only Bob Ross were around to paint some happiness back into this place. Maybe Steve Ross could do it. While on the subject, I wanted to imply that Bob Ross might have painted in the Muncie Mall at some point. On his show, Bob and his son Steve have made mentions about painting at local malls, and I scoured the newspaper archives. And lo and behold, I was able to find one entry in a 1983 paper. Bill Alexander presents Bob Ross the Happy Painter. At the bottom was a note that said, "Free demonstrations daily at the Muncie Mall." So it's inconclusive if he ever did, but there is one thing that suggests a maybe. But I do have to ask a little further. Did anyone grow up going to this mall back in the day? Tell me, was Bob here at any point? Did he do any demos, paintings? Did he sell anything on the spot? I'm genuinely curious. It is just about time for us to wrap up our walk in the Muncie Mall. What did you think about this place? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you think there's any hope for this mall? Or will we see it demolished in favor of yet another lifestyle center? Because that's totally not going to be the next dead mall 30 to 60 years from now. Do share your thoughts in the comments below. But be civil. Thanks for having me, Muncie, Indiana. And until next time, this is Doomie Grunt wishing you and the Muncie Mall farewell and good luck in this mad, mad, mad world. Alright, and there's another happy little store. Right there in the mall. And you know what? He seems a little lonely. Let's paint him some friends and get some shoppers in there.